It started with an unexpected delay. My flight from Seattle to New York was supposed to take off at 9:45 p.m., but a mechanical issue grounded the plane. The airline rebooked me for the next morning, handed me a meal voucher, and suggested I find somewhere comfortable to wait. I was annoyed, but not worried. It wasn't my first delay, and I'd rather wait than be on a faulty plane. Still, the idea of spending the night in an unfamiliar airport didn't sit right with me. I texted my best friend Mia, "Flight's delayed, stuck here overnight." Her response came fast. "That sucks. Stay safe. Call me if you need anything." I wished I had someone to stay with, but the airport was busy enough. I wasn't alone. At least, that's what I thought. I grabbed a sandwich and a coffee, found an empty gate, and settled into a chair near the window. The lights outside flickered against the dark tarmac, and I told myself to relax. Then I noticed him, a man sitting 2 rows behind me. Middle-aged, plain clothes, unremarkable, but something about him made me uneasy. Maybe it was the way he wasn't really doing anything. No phone, no book, no laptop. Just sitting, staring. At first I brushed it off. Maybe he was waiting like me. Maybe I was being paranoid. But when I switched seats, moving to a different row, he moved too. The first time, it could have been coincidence. The second time, maybe bad luck. But the third time, I knew it wasn't just in my head. I went to a convenience store near the terminal's main entrance, pretending to browse the overpriced snacks. When I glanced at the reflection in the glass, he was there, lingering by the entrance, watching me. My stomach twisted. I fumbled with my phone and sent another text to Mia. "Some guy is creeping me out. I think he's following me." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Are you sure? Airports are full of people." That's what I wanted to believe. Maybe he was just traveling too. Maybe I was overreacting. But then I saw it. When I stepped toward a different aisle, he stepped too, like a shadow mimicking my movements. I didn't buy anything. I walked straight past him, back into the main terminal. I felt his eyes on me the entire time. I found an airport security officer near the check-in counters. She looked exhausted, barely glancing up from her clipboard when I approached. "Excuse me," I said. "I think someone's following me. A man. He's been watching me since my flight was delayed." She sighed, clearly unimpressed. "Where is he now?" I turned to point. He was gone. A cold wave ran down my spine. "He was just there," I said, scanning the crowd. "I swear." She gave me a patient but tired look. "If you see him again, come find me." That wasn't reassuring, but what else could I do? I walked back toward my gate, glancing over my shoulder every few seconds. Nothing. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe I was sleep-deprived and jumpy from the delay. Then, as I reached into my bag for my wallet, my fingers brushed against something unfamiliar, a small folded piece of paper. I pulled it out slowly, my heartbeat hammering as I unfolded it. "Why did you talk to security?" scrawled in messy, slanted handwriting. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't spoken to anyone except the officer, and I hadn't put this in my bag. I didn't wait to see if he was still nearby. I grabbed my bag and walked fast, too fast, toward the nearest open restaurant. A 24-hour diner, mostly empty except for a few scattered travelers. I sat at the counter, pretending to study the menu. My hands were shaking as I typed to Mia. "He left a note in my bag." Her reply came instantly. "What? What did it say?" I hesitated before typing. "Why did you talk to security?" Mia's response came back immediately. How the hell did he get close enough to do that? I had no idea. My bag had been with me the whole time, or at least I thought it had. A server came by. "You okay, honey?" I must have looked as terrified as I felt. "Yeah, just, can I sit here for a while?" She nodded. "Of course, order whatever you need." I glanced at the entrance, half expecting him to walk through the doors. He didn't. Not yet. I stayed in that diner for hours, ordering coffee after coffee just to have a reason to sit there. I kept checking the terminal, scanning faces, searching for him. He never came in, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still there somewhere, waiting. By dawn, my new flight was finally boarding. I walked straight to security, avoiding every shadow. When I finally took my seat on the plane, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Was it over? I didn't know. As the plane took off, I reached into my bag to grab my earbuds. My fingers brushed against something unexpected, another piece of folded paper. Heart pounding, I pulled it out and slowly unfolded it. "See you next time." The handwriting was the same as before. Messy, slanted. I hadn't noticed anyone near me in hours. Somewhere between security and boarding, someone had slipped it into my bag. I gripped the note tightly, staring out the window as the city lights faded below. I wasn't sure if I'd ever feel safe traveling alone again. It was the summer of 2023 when it started at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, one of the busiest airports in the country. I had a 4-hour layover before my next flight, so I did what I always do. Found a quiet spot near my gate, put in my headphones, and scrolled through my phone. About an hour in, a man sat down next to me. Well-dressed, early 40s, expensive watch. He had that confident air of someone who traveled frequently. He didn't say anything at first, just glanced at his phone before turning to me. "Long layover?" he asked casually. I nodded. "Yeah, waiting for my connection to New York." He smiled. "Same here. Business or pleasure?" I hesitated for a second, but figured there was no harm in conversation. "Business. I work in consulting." That was my first mistake, giving him information. He introduced himself as Daniel. Said he worked in finance, often traveling between Chicago and New York. He talked just enough to make me feel comfortable. Nothing too personal, just idle chit-chat about work, airports, the usual travel annoyances. He was charming. Too charming. After about 20 minutes, he checked his watch. "Hey, I was going to grab a drink before the flight. You want to join?" Normally I'd decline, but I had time to kill, and he seemed like an interesting guy. That was my second mistake. We walked to one of the airport bars, a busy but dimly lit lounge near the international terminal. I ordered a whiskey, he got a scotch. The conversation continued, casual but smooth, like he had done this 1,000 times before. Then he asked, "So how long are you in New York?" "A few days," I answered. "You staying in Manhattan?" I hesitated again. Too many questions. Before I could answer, he laughed. "Sorry, I don't mean to interrogate you. Force of habit. I used to work in private security, always gathering intel without realizing it." Something about that didn't sit right. I changed the subject. After about half an hour, he excused himself to use the restroom. As soon as he was out of sight, I checked my phone. No signal. That was strange. Wi-Fi worked fine before. I glanced around. The bartender was busy, the place crowded. Nothing seemed off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That's when I noticed it. My carry-on bag, the one I had placed right beside my stool, was slightly unzipped. I hadn't touched it. I yanked it onto my lap and checked inside. My passport was gone. My stomach dropped. I checked my pockets. Wallet was still there, phone still there. But my passport was missing. Had someone taken it? Had I dropped it? I stood up quickly, scanning the room. Daniel was gone. Panic set in. If I didn't have my passport, I wouldn't be able to board my flight. Worse, someone else had it. Someone who could use it for identity theft, fraud, or worse. I rushed to the bartender. "Hey, did you see the guy I was with? Tall, brown hair, suit?" He barely looked up. "Nah, people come and go." I turned toward the entrance just as I saw a glimpse of Daniel slipping through the crowd, heading toward the exit. I ran after him. I caught up to him near a security checkpoint. My voice was sharp. "Hey, Daniel." He turned, smiling, too calm. "Oh, hey, everything okay?" "My passport is missing." His expression didn't change. "That's terrible. You sure you didn't misplace it?" I stared at him. He was too smooth, too rehearsed. And then, something even worse happened. Another man appeared. Dressed similarly, business suit, expensive watch. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Sir, is there a problem here?" For a split second, I thought he was security. Then I noticed it. The same watch Daniel was wearing. They were working together. I had to think fast. If I accused him of stealing, it would be my word against his. If I got aggressive, they could turn it around on me, claim I was causing a scene. I needed to get to real security. Fast, I forced a laugh, pretending to relax. "Maybe I left it at the bar. I'll go check." Daniel smiled. "Good idea. Hope you find it." I walked away, but I didn't go to the bar. I went straight to an airport security officer. I explained everything quickly, meeting Daniel, the missing passport, the second man. The officer's face darkened. "This isn't the first time we've heard this," he muttered. Within minutes, they pulled up security footage. Daniel and the second man had been seen in the airport multiple times that week, always approaching solo travelers. They checked the bar's cameras. Daniel had taken my passport, handed it off to someone else, and walked away like nothing happened. Security moved fast. They locked down the nearest exit, alerted TSA, and within an hour they had recovered my passport in a trash can near the restroom. Daniel and his friend? Gone. No boarding records, no IDs, no way to track them. It was like they never existed. I made my flight that night, but I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation, the small moments I had ignored, the too friendly questions, the sudden Wi-Fi loss, the distraction at the bar. I had been seconds away from real trouble. Now, whenever I travel, I keep my passport in an inside pocket. I never put my bag on the floor. And if a stranger seems too friendly, too interested in my plans, I walk away. Because next time, I might not be so lucky. That night still lingers in my mind, though it happened about 6 months ago. I had been away for a week on a work trip, and exhaustion settled deep in my bones. The airport was quieter than usual, with only a few scattered passengers making their way through baggage claim. I retrieved my suitcase, adjusted my coat, and headed toward the exit where the rideshare pickups were located. The air outside was crisp, a stark contrast to the stale cabin air I had been breathing for hours. As I pulled out my phone to order a car, I noticed a man standing a few feet away. He wasn't holding a sign for a passenger, nor did he seem to be waiting for anyone in particular. He was just watching. I told myself it was nothing, just another weary traveler waiting for his ride. But something about the way he looked at me made my skin crawl. I booked a rideshare and kept my eyes glued to my phone, trying to focus on the screen rather than the gnawing unease creeping into my chest. The app estimated my driver would arrive in 7 minutes. 7 minutes felt like an eternity. I glanced up, hoping to shake off the feeling that something was off. The man was still there. Same spot, same stare. He wasn't pretending to be busy. No phone in his hand, no luggage at his feet, just standing, watching. His posture too still, his focus too sharp. I swallowed hard and shifted my weight, bending down to adjust my suitcase as if it needed fixing. Maybe if I looked preoccupied, he'd lose interest. Then a car pulled up. For a moment I prayed it was my ride, but it wasn't. And that's when I noticed he moved, not toward the terminal, not toward any other waiting passengers. He was walking toward me. My stomach twisted. I gripped my phone tighter, refreshing the app, silently urging my driver to get here faster. Relief flooded in when my driver's name and car model appeared on my screen, a blue sedan. 2 minutes away. 2 minutes. The man was closing the gap between us. I could feel my pulse hammering in my throat, my breathing shallow. My feet itched to move, but I forced myself to stay put. Running might make it worse. I just needed to hold out for 2 minutes. My driver pulled up just as the man was a few steps away. I grabbed my suitcase, yanked the door open, and slid into the back seat, locking the door the moment it shut behind me. The driver, a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor, turned around. "Everything all right?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired. Long flight." As we pulled away from the curb, I risked a glance outside. The man was still there, watching. I exhaled, convincing myself I was overreacting. Maybe he was just another passenger waiting for a different ride. Maybe I was just exhausted. Maybe. But then 5 minutes into the drive, I saw it, a black SUV, following us. I sat up straighter, my fingers tightening around my phone. "Hey, could you take a different route?" I asked the driver, trying to sound casual. "Sure," he said, glancing at me through the rearview mirror. "Everything okay?" I hesitated. "Yeah, just a weird feeling." He nodded and made an unexpected turn down a side street. I watched the SUV, it followed. My stomach dropped. "I think someone's following us," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The driver frowned. "You sure?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because the SUV sped up. "Okay, hold on," my driver muttered. He took another sharp turn, this time onto a busier street, weaving between cars. I looked back. The SUV hesitated at the intersection, but then made the same turn. "Shit," I whispered. "Calling the police," my driver said, picking up his phone. "Hang tight." I pressed my back against the seat, my pulse pounding. I didn't know who was in that SUV or what they wanted, but I knew one thing. They weren't just going in the same direction. They were after me. As my driver relayed details to the dispatcher, he made another turn, this time into a gas station lot. Bright lights flooded the car. A few people stood near the convenience store entrance. Safety. The SUV slowed, lingering at the edge of the lot, and then it kept going. We waited. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10. It didn't come back. I let out a shaky breath as the police arrived. I filed a report, but without a license plate or a clear description of the driver, there wasn't much they could do. But I knew what I saw. And I knew that if my driver hadn't reacted the way he did, I might not have made it home that night. I didn't sleep well for weeks. Every time I took a rideshare, every time I walked alone at night, I felt that same creeping dread. Whoever they were, they had planned it. They had waited. They had followed me from the airport, through the winding roads, right up until they realized I wasn't alone. I still wonder what would have happened if I had hesitated for just a few seconds longer at the curb. If I had taken too long getting into the car. If I had gone home alone. The plan was simple. A direct flight from Denver to Chicago, land by midnight, and be in bed before dawn. But the universe had other ideas. A weather delay grounded my flight, leaving me stranded in an airport that felt eerily empty at this hour. My new flight wouldn't depart for another 6 hours. Exhaustion settled into my bones, and I knew I needed to freshen up before finding a place to sit for the long wait. The terminal was quiet, too quiet. The occasional overhead announcement echoed in the vast space, and apart from a few scattered passengers and drowsy employees, I was mostly alone. Then I noticed the restroom sign ahead, its fluorescent glow humming in the silence. Without thinking twice, I stepped inside. The women's restroom was empty when I walked in. Bright, sterile, the faint smell of industrial cleaner lingering in the air. I picked a stall near the end, locked the door, and set my bag down on the floor. As I rummaged through it for some face wipes, I heard it, a faint scraping sound. I froze, holding my breath. The noise had come from the farthest stall, the handicapped one, but when I glanced under the stall doors, I didn't see any feet. Maybe it was just the air vents or a loose ceiling tile shifting. I shook off the unease and focused on wiping my face. But just as I reached for my bag again, I heard it again. A slow, deliberate scraping sound, like metal dragging against tile. I turned my head toward the far stall, every muscle in my body tensed. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. I leaned down slightly, just enough to peek under the stalls. Nothing. No feet, no shadows, no sign that anyone else was in the restroom. The sensible part of me said to leave. Just get out, don't overthink it. But then came the click, the distinct sound of a lock turning, from the farthest stall. My blood ran cold. Someone was in there. I backed up toward the door, my pulse hammering in my ears. I reached for the handle, but right as my fingers brushed the metal, thud. A heavy, deliberate knock from inside the stall. I yanked the door open and stumbled into the terminal, my breath coming in gasps. The restroom was empty behind me, eerily quiet except for the distant hum of a janitor's cart. I hurried away, heart pounding, promising myself I was just overreacting. But then I made a mistake. I turned back, and I saw it. The farthest stall door was wide open, empty. And yet as I stood frozen in the terminal, I swore I could still hear that faint, metallic scraping sound.